Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopiyana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopiyana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Rudikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Rudikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Thank you. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bodreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavajuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of January 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are on Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 28, Puranjan becomes a woman in his next life. Text number 54. Hangsav Aham Cha Tvam Charya Sakayau Manasayanau Abhutam Antara Valkaha Sahasra Padivatsaran Hangsavaham Chatvam Hangsavaham Chatvam Charya Sakaya Manasayana Abhutam Antaravalka Sahasra Parivatsaran Hangsavaham Chatvam Charya Sakaya Manasayana Abhutam Antaravalka Sahasra Parivatsaran Hangsavaham Chatvam Charya Sakaya Manasayana Abhutam Antaravalka Sahasra Parivatsaran Hangsavaham Chatvam Charya Sakaya Manasayana Abhutam Antaravalka Sahasra Parivatsaran Hangsavaham Chatvam Charya Sakaya Manasayana Abhutam Antaravalka Sahasra Parivatsaran Hangsavaham Chatvam Charya Sakaya Manasayana Abhutam Antaravalka Sahasra Parivatsaran. Word by word meanings. Hangsao, two swans. Aham, I. Cha, and. Tvam, you. Cha, also. Arya, O great soul. Sakayao, friends. Manasa Ayanao, together in the Manasa lake. Abhutam, became. Antara, separated. Va, indeed. Okaha, from the original home. Sahasra, thousands. Padi, successively. Vatsaran, years. Translation. The unknown Brahmin continued to speak to the wife of Malayadvaja. My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manasa lake. Although we have been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. Purport. The original home of the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, both the Lord and the living entities live together very peacefully. Since the living entity remains engaged in the service of the Lord, they both share a blissful life in the spiritual world. However, when the living entity wants to enjoy himself, he falls down into the material world. Even while he is in that position, the Lord remains with him as the Supersoul, his intimate friend. Because of his forgetfulness, the living entity does not know that the Supreme Lord is accompanying him as the Supersoul. In this way, the living entity remains conditioned in each and every millennium. Although the Lord follows him as a friend, the living entity, because of forgetful material existence, does not recognize him. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So the Brahman / Super Soul is continuing to speak to this bereaved wife, a widow now of Balayadvaja, who's passed away. I think he's been burned up now in a fire. She didn't enter the fire, so he's immolated. And the unknown friend, the super soul, is enlightening this daughter of King Vidarbha, and reminding this soul of its actual nature, his actual nature. And this is what all of the Shastra that we have really are geared toward that. As Prabhupada mentions in the purport here, due to forgetfulness, the living entity, although accompanied by the super soul, is completely ignorant of his natural position, his position in the spiritual world, his nature as an eternal soul, eternal living being. Everything is just deep ignorance, and from that ignorance, we're bound up. We become bound up by the modes of nature, by the external material energy, and we continue this life perpetually until there's an intervention. This idea of an intervention. When someone is in this material world, they're addicted to gambling, say, or to alcohol or some drug situation. They're completely under the control of that addiction, and they need help from outside, from their best friend, from a dear relative, somebody who cares about them, who can shake them up and say, "You're ruining your life. Let's go to rehab. You're going to rehab," or something. And if there's a nice relationship there enough, then the person surrenders and has a chance of being reformed. So similarly, we have absolutely no hope of getting out of this dilemma on our own, because our entire field of understanding is bound up with this material energy. And so we're certainly suffering in various ways, so we try to figure out a way to get out of it. And therefore you have a whole history, a recorded history and prehistory and history that we find in the Puranas of ancient times, where there's some attempt at adjustment of the material energy. Society, government, family, somehow or other adjustment, and we have high hopes for it. But in each and every case, without fail, the hope for mitigation of our inherent miseries, which are just threefold miseries, come along with the material energy, and those unstoppable miseries and sufferings of birth, old age, disease, and death. So in every case, those attempts to solve the problem fail. We find so many verses in the Bhagavatam like that, right at the beginning of the second canto, where the Bhagavatam really commences again. You'll find the second canto begins with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shukadeva begins to teach Parikshit there. So Parikshit is fully enlightened, and he's given up. He's already leading a wonderful devotional life as a Vaishnava king. So there's no question of it being covered over, but still, he gives up his kingdom, he gives up his royal dress, he just sits down by the bank of the Ganges, Yamuna, whatever it may be, to hear the Bhagavatam, to see what comes. And Shukadeva arrives and speaks the Bhagavatam to him. And so he asks the question that we should all ask. Now he's faced with death in 7 days. He has notice. He's been served, if you will, cursed. He had the power to counteract the curse, but he accepted it as Krishna's will, and so he took advantage of that. And so he knows. So now he knows the answer to the question. But for us, he asked the question: what should one do? What should one think about? What should one hear and chant as death is imminent? Which is the key question, because death is the exam. Your state of mind at that point is going to determine your destiny. That's the basic ABCs in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Yang vapi smarang bhavam jajachante kalevanam. So he asked that question, and what does Shukadeva say? Very nice question. Vadiyaneshate prashna kuto loka hitangnapa apnavet sabalang shrota vyadashaya paraha. Very nice question. Vadiyan, glorious question. Prashna is question. Because the answer the question itself and the answer to it is beneficial both for the speaker and the hearer and the listeners. It's glorified because it gets right to the root of the problem. How should we form or endeavor to form our consciousness so that we can achieve life's goal or at least progress toward it at that critical moment of death? So then he says, on the other hand, and this comes, it's an often way to teach, that in the Shastra you'll find, this is the reality, and on the other hand you have this in contrast. He says, on the other hand, Shotav Yadhiri Rajendra Nirnan Santi Sahasra Shaha Apashyatam Atma Tattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Those who are completely absorbed in material activities, characterized, symbolized by Grihamedi life, materialistic family life. They have thousands and millions of subject matters for hearing, all of which keep them bound up to this world. Apashyatam Atma Tattvam, they have no vision, no interest, no awareness at all of the truth of the soul, or that one needs to inquire about the truth of the soul, about your ultimate destiny. Where did everything come from? What am I? Why am I suffering? They want to know why they're suffering, but they don't ask the question of the right source. They think, oh, I'm suffering because those guys took my money, or they're organizing some political party. That's why I'm suffering. Or I'm suffering because I need to get an education, material education, and then it'll be all right. You come out at the other end, it's all a scam. The guys who have the money and the control, they see this need, so they make it impossible. You come out from the other side. I haven't been through this. When I went to school, I spent about half a year in college at first, then I spent another half a year later on. It was like, $2,000 a year. I had a full scholarship, so I had all the advantages, but I dropped out. Thank God. That led me to become a devotee. But now you get, you get your degree. By the time you come out, you have a big debt, right? And you have this debt. $1 million? I haven't heard that. Oh, that's my phone going off. Whatever it is, and then the jobs aren't there that you hope were there. So you have to take some menial job, which you just get deeper in debt, and the interest keeps building up, and So you had this strategy for living a good life, so you wouldn't end up on the street like all these other people. I got to get a good degree, and you're not on the street, but you're still under a tremendous burden. That's just one problem. So this is material life. Dukkha aushadam tadapi dukkam. This is a line from Prahlad Maharaj. The remedy for the dukkha that we may employ brings more dukkha. It brings more dukkha. If nothing else, it's some material remedy. It keeps you bound in this world, so you're just still at the mercy of the material energy. Birth, old age, disease, and death. So someone who, when I was growing up, we had this whole movement. I think it was a little early for you. Radicals. We want to be radicals. And there was socialism, there was communism, there was a whole idea. The idea that this philosophy, Marxism, Leninism, got to the root of the whole problem. Who owns the means of production? It was a whole materialistic thing, And I would, Beat Back to Godhead magazine, such a wonderful magazine, inviting you back to the spiritual world by the very title, and full of transcendental knowledge, So I wouldn't read Back to Godhead magazine. I had no idea. We read USSR magazine. Very slick, beautiful pictures, idyllic scene out in the country and everything. It's big propaganda. I believed all that. So, but the idea is that there's some radical solution. If you get some superficial solution, it's not going to help. Just like if you have a disease, you may treat the symptoms, but you want to get to the root of the disease, so you really cure it, right? So we think, okay, we'll get this radical solution. But the real radical solution is here in Krishna consciousness. The whole problem is the misconception the soul has no idea who it really is. That we're spirit souls, we're part and parcel of God, there is a God, it's Krishna, all of that. And what is this world? It's composed of the modes of nature, how it works, how it came about to be. The radical solution is that knowledge and the practice that is based on that knowledge that will actually take you out of this world and back to Godhead, which is what these verses are all about. First understanding where we came from. How did I get here? The previous verse gave this very, clear explanation. So here, we need this friend, the friend. Now, Narada Muni is the friend of King Prachanabarhishat, right? Prachanabarhishat reveres him. This is a great culture. Oh, this is Narada Muni. I should listen to him. Stop the offering, stop the animal slaughter, try to go to heaven and listen. The whole thing is to save Prachanabarhishat. In doing so, he's also enlightening us. So now this dear friend, who's nothing but the super soul, has arrived to explain, the relationship he has with the reborn Puranjan, and to give him instruction about how he can actually progress. Not to jump into the fire of your dead husband, but to practice Krishna consciousness. So first thing he's describing here, we live together. We have this intimate relationship that's been going on for millions of years. That's with the super soul. The super soul never abandons us. But we're far from our original home. I was just reviewing some of these beautiful verses from the Brahma Samhita, and it describes, what is that? I think it's Ananda Chinmaya Dasa Patibhavitabis, Tabi Yevan Nijurupataya Kalabi, Goloka Evan Nevisat Yakidatma Bhuto. Which is exactly pertinent. So that's the verse that has the longest purport. I mean, that's kind of an essential verse in that Brahma Samhita. You read the purports in 1 or 2 paragraphs. These are the pages of purport. Because it's describing what's going on in the spiritual world. Ananda Chinmaya Dasarpati Bhavi Tabis. That at every moment there are these blissful relationships with Krishna and his expansions. Ananda Chinmaya Dasarpati Bhavi Tabi Eva Nijurupati Yakalabi. So Nijarupa means his own rup is expanded as everything there. And his energies, that's also his expansions, internal energy, varieties of internal energies. Srimati Radharani, non-different from Krishna, right? His pleasure energy, love personified. Do you ever think of that while you're chanting Hare Krishna? That there's Hare, they're all non-different from the actual, right? That's Krishna there, and there's Radharani. That's the love. That's the prema we're looking for, Shouldn't neglect to hear those words, the Hare Krishna, the Hare and the Hare Krishna. So, Krishna's enjoying there. Ananda Chinmaya is made of bliss and awareness, consciousness, reality, eternal. And then the third line, Goloka Eva Nivasat. He's all going on in Goloka Vrindavan, but at the same time he's manifest in the hearts of all and in every atom. So that accessibility is so important. Closer than our very self, as close as could be. But because our vision and our attention is outward, we've forgotten everything and we haven't accessed. So the great devotees like Srila Prabhupada, who have embraced the mood of Prahlad Maharaj. The mood of Prahlad Maharaj is really the preacher's mood. Those 2 essential verses of his prayers, where he's saying, I have no problem. Na udvijay. It's interesting, this word udvijay, because this is how he starts his instruction to his father. I don't know if you remember that. He says, what is it? Tat saudamunye sodavaya dehinam sada samudvigna diyam sadgahat. Udvigna is the same word as udvijay. It's a little different form of it. So it means disturbed. Always disturbed. In the material world, the minds of the materials are always disturbed. Why? Because you've taken shelter of something that's constantly changing. You're trying, a sadgrahat. Grahat is a word, practically the same English word, to grab, to hold on to. You're grabbing onto the temporary body, the temporary relation, the temporary money, the temporary world, and that's your shelter. That's your shelter. It's like you're grabbing onto you're in the ocean of samsara. You go overboard, and now there's a life preserver. You're taking shelter of the life preserver, right? So you hold on to it, but then, oh my God, there's a leak. It's getting on water. I can't. The shelter is a fake shelter. So that's what material life is all about. So, but Prahlad says, Naidvod Vijay, I'm never disturbed, and he proved it. Imagine how disturbing it would be just for someone to say, stop believing, stop chanting, Stop believing in Krishna and believe in me as God. Otherwise, I'll put you into this boiling vat of oil. Does your mind be disturbed? Prahlad said, no, my mind wasn't disturbed. I just completely, absorbed my mind in Krishna, and he was saved. Thrown off a cliff, crushed by elephants, poisoned snakes, whatever they had to kill, he tried to use it, cutting. He was protected. He wasn't in anxiety. So he says, even after the whole battle is over, and the Shringadeva is right there, he says, I was never in any difficulty, and I'm not now. Because my mind is with you. And you're across the river of Vaitarani in the spiritual world. Wherever I want, whenever I want, I can chant your glories and immerse my mind in an ocean of nectar. So what's the problem? Let me just go to Vrindavan and chant. And many devotees do that. But he says, Shoche tato. I am aggrieved. I am in anxiety for these foolish souls. Maya sukaya bharamudva. Every word is so important. The word bhara means a burden. Great burden that you have to take on in order to enjoy this little flickering happiness. You get the money, and then you have to go somewhere and you buy it, and it inevitably doesn't meet your expectations, or you lose it, or you lose the ability to enjoy it, or or as Krishna says, the main problem is adyantavanda. It has a beginning and an end. It leaves you with the desire to do it again, but you're not enjoying now. So the whole thing is just one anxiety after another. So he says, but I'm in anxiety, not about that, but of these fools and rascals, my god brothers, they're also souls like me, he feels that bond, who are trying to enjoy this Maya Sukaya, but I'm bearing the great burden, Udvahato Vimudhan, these complete fools that are suffering like anything because of that attempt to constantly enjoy the senses and the mind in this material world. So then the next verse, confirms his analysis. What's he going to do? Prayana deva munayo svamukti kama maunam chadanti vijane naparata nishta. So first he analyzes, he says, there are many munis, there are many, yogis and people who understand the basics of matter and spirit, but for the most part, almost all of them, svamukti kama. He right there he puts in, just as Sridhar Swami does at the beginning of Bhagavatam, he puts mukti, my desire for my liberation, in the category of kama, material desire. It's just like, I read this or heard it on a lecture, I forget which, where Prabhupada describes that the desire for mukti is the same species of desire as in ordinary material life. You take so many steps to try to avoid pain or try to mitigate pain. You pay your heater's bill, that's a desire for mukti, from the cold, right? So it just goes on like that. And the ultimate one of desire is to completely get free from the material body entirely. And simply to regain our spiritual state and merge into Brahman. No more death, no more birth, just unlimited Brahmananda consciousness. I am that I am. How long can you last like that? It's right there in the Bhagavatam. It's not natural for the soul to simply have no activities, no form, no relationships. The motivation for that endeavor to get liberation alone is actually fear of suffering. That's not that wholesome, emotion for the soul. The soul is we want to, drink in and to swim in the love of our dear most Lord, and try to please Him, and in this way experience varieties of ecstasy and bliss in our original life. And that's what Krishna consciousness promises. So that's knowledge. So Prahlad is saying, I'm not like that. Prayana devanyo svamukti kama maunam charanti. And what do? They don't say anything. The first thing is silence. Charanti vijane. And they wander where there's no other people. Vijane means in the secluded places, in the caves, in the mountains, somewhere away from the cities. I'm not going to stay in the city. That will distract my meditation. I got to get out of here, away from everybody, So that's the calculation of the Svamukti Kamis. Mauna Vijane Naparata Nishta. Very important phrase. It means not having any determination to help others. Para artha means that the welfare of others. Na para artha nishta, a determination. In other words, devoid of it. So by contrast, naitan vihaya kripanan. I'm not going to give up on these kripanas, these rascals and misers who are misusing human form of life. Because I don't see any possibility of their deliverance other than you, my Lord. And the implication is, therefore, I have to be here to give them you. That's the actual role of the preacher. To give people understanding of who they are, and to give them knowledge of Krishna, of God, and how they can build or reawaken their original relationship. So that's the mood of this entire movement. It was shown by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the genuine Vaishnavas, is that they sacrifice in order to help others to come closer to Krishna, knowing full well that this is the most pleasing thing to Krishna, to increase the number of devotees, to bring others, grab them from the ocean of Maya and samsara and pull them on the boat. You ever see that painting of the boat of ISKCON? Did you ever see it? There's a painting like that. I'll show you the illustration. I put it in a slideshow one time. There's Prabhupada on the staff, and the devotees are all there. This big ark, it's like Noah's Ark, and this ocean, with a stormy ocean. It's just like that. The real shelter is the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, and that's what ISKCON is. ISKCON is giving people a shelter, Krishna's shelter. So our responsibility is to be representatives of this super soul here, and it's almost like he's doing Sankirtan. Here's somebody. There were so many stories, you could probably tell more than me, where there were poor guys who were about to commit suicide, and they got a book, or they came in touch with a devotee, and they changed. They said, well, we had somebody in this whole community who was suicidal. Not anymore, hopefully. But it's like that. I mean, the material world, sometimes it's just too much. This person left you, you're broke, you're about to be homeless, what's the point? You can say, and then you meet a devotee and your friend, here, take this prasadam, come to the temple, take this book, and by reading the book, you drink in this nectar, and there's hope. That's the thing in Prabhupada's books, every page, no matter, I was just meditating this morning on this phrase, patita pavana. It's like we sing that every morning, right, about Prabhupada. How important that understanding is. What is the actual meaning? Pavana really means purifying. One who purifies. Patita is the most fallen. So the purifier of the most fallen, which means uplifter, savior of the most fallen. Because it's our impurities, it's all of our unwanted desires and abhadras and anarthas that are dragging us down and keeping us bound here. So if someone gives us a method by which we can get rid of those impurities, they're saving us from not just one death, from countless sufferings in this world. There's no comparison to the welfare that one is giving, and that's why Prabhupada often says in the books and out in person that the real welfare work is giving this knowledge and this system of Krishna consciousness to other people, somehow attracting them. Just as we were attracted. We would bless somebody, one of our gurus, our Vartma Pradarshaka guru. Vartma means path. Pradarshaka means shower, one who shows the path. That's one of the different kinds of gurus. It may be that book distributor, someone gives you a card, invitation, somehow starts you on your path to devotional service. So we're all meant to be gurus in that sense, And also to learn the philosophy and study, and that's what these books are for. Prabhupada want us to systematically study, classes of course, so that we can, when someone is really inquisitive, we can give them, genuine philosophy, and of course point them to the books as the real foundation of it. But we also should be well-versed and understand this. Prabhupada wanted that so much. And I guess every book distributor knows, as we have a perfect example, if you're always absorbed in reading the books, you're really enlivened to distribute the books. Because you're feeling the benefit of this knowledge. It becomes so pure nectar. And why should I hoard it? I should give it out. And in fact, it becomes sweeter
when you share it. Just like the simple act of I remember there was this one devotee, I don't think you knew him, back when I was in L.A., Vijitatma. Did you ever know Vijitatma? Vijitatma, he would always carry a nectar of devotion around with him, right? At least that was when I was in L.A. He'd have it in one of those little side bags, And if you saw a devotee, it looked like he had a few minutes or maybe a half a minute, he would pull it out and say, "You want to hear something?" And he would read to you. It was wonderful, actually. Great example. But that's what the society is for. Prabhupada says right in the Nectar of Instruction that I created this society to give people a forum to hear about Krishna, hear and chant about Krishna. And from that, everything grows. From hearing and becoming enlivened about Krishna consciousness, what to speak of actually chanting, and one is attracted to the association and attracted to increase the association. And and even in these dark times, there's light in our we get the benefit of practicing Krishna consciousness and seeing how it can ward off so much heavy emotion. I mean, you read that there's so much more depression, opioids, overdoses are increasing because people are, they're faced with the reality of material life. That we're not in control. At any time, death is fake and invisible. It's so scary. So, but Krishna consciousness helps us to deal with that and to tolerate and come through this period. So, one thing I wanted to mention again about the. Some of you know, maybe you are not aware of it, that there was an ongoing debate. I don't tell you how this came about. Actually, it started. There was a little confusion about how we got here. The fall of the jiva. And back in the 70s, during Prabhupada's time, there was one devotee who was a big leader at the time, Madhudvish Swami, who was the GBC at that time of Australia, I believe. This is 71, 70, something like that. And there was a devotee in Sydney or Montreal or Melbourne, I forget which city, who was the president there, and he had done some research in Prabhupada's books. It's only, no one read anything but Prabhupada's books at that time. There's nothing available. And he had concluded that we came from the Brahma Jyoti. There's one passage in the Nectar in the Isho that it couldn't be interpreted that way. And the reason why there was this doubt is that Krishna says right in the Gita, once going, you never come back. So how was that different from being there? All right, we fell from the spiritual world and then we want to go back home, back to Godhead. But how does it compute? If we were there, then why should we ever come back and go, fall from here? So there was a lot of confusion. And Madhudvish Swami wanted to send out a statement from Prabhupada describing this in full to the temples in Australia. So he wrote to him about that, and Prabhupada, I think he must have dictated something, because there's a letter which I have, a facsimile of this was a whole issue, and it at the bottom of this letter it says "see enclosure" in red. So the letter itself doesn't really deal with the topic, but it's enclosure. It's a letter to Madhudvish. And that enclosure was shown to be by Madhudvish, which I also photocopied. And it was a typed out essay. But it looked like it had been edited a little bit, because it wasn't like something, exactly, because I was familiar with Prabhupada's dictations, But anyway, be that as it may, it was the statement that Prabhupada had given for that. And it's come to be known as the Crow and Tal letter. It really wasn't a letter, it was addended to a letter, but it's known by that. And I'll just give you a summary of it and why it's known as Crow and Tal, which is interesting. So Prabhupada says there, I won't get into the whole thing, but he basically what he's saying is that the living entity has free will, has minute free will. We have Krishna's qualities in a minute degree, and Krishna gives us this infinitesimal free will, so because we can decide which energy we're going to be controlled by. The internal energy, and we stay in the spiritual world for eternity, it's Nitya Siddha. Or we turn from Krishna and we get controlled by the external energy. We have to serve. We're going to serve that internal energy or the external energy. But that choice is ours. Otherwise, love has no meaning. Prabhupada famously says, Krishna wants us to love him, but he doesn't want us to love him at the point of a revolver. Love me or else. That's not love. Freely given. Just like at the end he says to Arjuna, now do what you want to do. I'm not going to force you. I've given you all this knowledge, do it. And he says, oh, okay, Karisheva Chanantava, I'll do as you say. So, we have that free will. And so, we, the fallen souls, the ones who are now Nitya Baddha, and this phrase Nitya Baddha, Nitya Bhukta needs to be explained a little bit, and I'll try to be very brief. We turn away from Krishna. It's described in the Bhagavatam, 11th canto. We turn away, becomes fearful, everything comes upside down. Instead of being the servant of Krishna, we try to be the master of Maya. And it causes fear, which is like a basic principle of the material world, and there's all kinds of sufferings. Since there's all kinds of sufferings, we're afraid of them. And so the solution is, guess what? Turning back again toward that same Lord and cultivating, reawakening our devotional service. So famously, there's this one line that's kind of the money quote. Because some say, yeah, we were in the Brahma Jyoti. But no, we were with Krishna. So Prabhupada says, formerly we were with Krishna in his Leela or sport. That's it. If we were with Krishna in his Leela, even within the Leela, it's so blissful, why did we leave? It's a mystery. Somehow or other, we wanted to try to imitate Krishna, be Krishna, and came down here. So then he described, but the interesting thing is, then it's described the third canto how the material body grows from the false ego. False ego is the false sense of self, a false sense of self separate from Krishna. We wanted that so we could try to compete with him. So then we're given that, and then starts our sojourn in the material world. In 9th canto, Prabhupada says we begin as Brahma, every one of us. But not every Brahma goes back to Godhead, obviously. Here we are. So, to make a long story short, one of the things he says is very interesting is that time is practically infinitely compressible and expandable. And he says all the millions of lifetimes of Brahma we may have been here, annihilations, we go into suspended animation, come out again, and start again. Who knows how long. All of that is just, we're actually practically sleeping in our original position there, and dreaming all of these different lives. That's what it is, a big, long, bad dream. But it's very real. Just like a dream could be very real. You can wake up screaming, whatever. Seems real. So, when we finally go back home again, it'll just seem like a split second we were gone. Krishna is still there, enjoying, and we'll wake up and back home, back to Godhead. Is he? I'm sorry? The nightmare is over, right? So that's quite amazing. So why Crow and Tal? This document, if you're interested in this subject, all of these two purports we just read today and especially yesterday, Prabhupada just lays out his understanding of the issue. I always refer to these. So the issue, was a prominent. I'm not going to get into the whole history of it, but the idea is that we don't belong here. We're we're all aliens. We're in exile from the spiritual world. So we need to hear about the spiritual world. We need to hear from Bhagavatam of how we got here, what is this world, and embrace the method for getting out, chanting, and in this age especially, and all of the other processes of bhakti that we know about, so that we can return to our natural home, where you never have to leave again. Nobody is home here. Everyone wants to have a home. If you have money, you buy a very expensive home. The poor people have no home. The homeless, it's a tremendous anxiety. But that's not your real home. When you're in this material world, this is your home, and it's just a rented apartment, and eventually you get thrown out, right? And you have to take another place. So there's no peace here. There can never be real peace in the material sphere because everything is changing. That's called Bhavasagra. But in the spiritual world, that's our eternal home. So that's what this Brahman is enlightening this Puranjan, reborn Puranjan about. And it's an allegory. So we're all benefiting from this. We all experience this. Those of us who have taken up, however much we're advanced, but in Krishna consciousness, we're all meeting the Super Soul. Super Soul comes externally as the spiritual master or spiritual masters, and also as the books, real books of knowledge He provides. So we have plenty of chance. It's just incumbent upon us to take advantage at every moment of this knowledge and of this opportunity to purify the heart, and purify all the senses, and to return once again to our spiritual world, to our home. And in the meanwhile, try to take as many others with us as we can. And that's what this movement is all about. So I'll end with one little meditation. Most of you know this painting where Krishna's out in the forest and sitting on a very comfortable seat, and there is this little dove on his hand, and there's a deer, and there's a little cow, I think, and so it's an idyllic scene, and it's very beautiful. So I wrote a little poem about this. It says, "The sweetness of Sri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon. But sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly." So there we are, back home, back to Godhead. Any comments or questions on these few points? Okay. I'm sorry? Oh, why is it called? Thank you, I forgot. Why is it called Crow and Tal? So at the end of this little essay, Prabhupada's giving the whole, his understanding of this conclusive understanding of this question. He says, but ultimately, don't worry about it. Don't waste your time wondering how we got here, where we came from. It's just wasted time. We know the system. Whether you're here or the means of getting back is the same, which is cultivating Krishna consciousness. So he gives the example of how to waste your time by unfruitful philosophical speculations. So in India, when you go there, and I think Ramapati Babu will confirm, you may see a lot of people kind of sitting around. There's quite a bit of unemployment sometimes. I remember him driving to Mayapur. You stop, get a refreshment. This guy's sitting around, able-bodied. So there was two fellows, in the middle of the day, and they're sitting and they're talking and they're shooting the breeze, and they're under a tal tree. Tal is a talaban. It's like there's a fruit, a tal tree. And so the fruits are quite ripe, they're sitting under there. And then this crow comes and lands on one branch. And is just doing as birds do, checking out, seeing, doing like this. And then he flies away. And as he flies away, the branch vibrates a little bit, and a fruit falls down. So, the question is, the all-important question, did the ripe fruit, fall of its own ripeness, they fall sometimes, and thereby, shake the branch and cause the bird to fly away? Or did the bird, in his flying away, cause the branch to tremble and cause the fruit to fall? And they spent the rest of the afternoon arguing that point. What's the need? In other words, they're just shooting the breeze, wasting time. So Prabhupada likened this question. We spent so much time in it because he had already gotten several letters. This wasn't the first time. If you look in the letters, you'll see this question comes up again and again. So he said, why waste time? Just this is the conclusion. I've given it to you. Now take it, accept it, and practice Krishna consciousness, and don't waste time with it. That's why it's called Crow and Tal. All glories to the Prabhupada. Haribol. What happened? Uh-oh. Tapas?
Yes, Prabhu.
Do we have any questions or comments?
We don't have any questions and comments on YouTube, but we have 20 people watching you now.
22?
20.
20. For each of you, you're 20. Thank you for listening. Tune in tomorrow at the same time. Hare Krishna.